This is Third Paradigm, and I'm Teresa Coraggio, and this is a Wombat special for Isaac Middle, who has invited me to talk about the fixed stars to which I am native. This is going to be fun. To learn about the fixed stars, Isaac sent me a beautiful essay by Chloe Margarita, and she is extremely poetic and descriptive. I really love the way that she looks at this, and just the beauty of her language is breathtaking. So I recommend looking at that. I'll be interpreting from what she has been saying about the fixed stars. Then I'll be giving a mytho-historical perspective from my research for my ongoing book, OMGdess. And then I will relate this in terms of my own personal life. All of my fixed stars are in the constellation that they call Leo, and true to my Denebola nature, I am going to be challenging that. But Denebola is the tail of the lion. The one that I will start with is Zosma Ascendant, which is the tailbone of the lion. The heart of the lion is Regulus, one of the 4 royal stars, and this governs royalty, true to its name, and is one of the brightest stars. So this is seen as the stalwart, the brave, the dealing with conflict and war, but victorious. What Zosma is the forgotten, is the abused, is the body of the people and the ones who are most left behind. The Zosma star is the oracle of the forgotten, the oracle of the victim. It isn't representing the victimized. It's more the one who is speaking for them. So let's look at that. How did the constellation become Leo the lion? Or maybe to put it in mythological terms, how did Leo the lion become a constellation? The story goes that Heracles, in order to become a hero, had to accomplish 12 tasks. The first one was to slay the Nemean lion, who was terrorizing the population. This lion could not be killed because its fur was so hard and thick, it was like armor. No arrow could pierce it. And now let's take a moment and look at the similarities between the words Heracles, hero, and arrow, that these all have that H-E-I-R or H-I-E-R sound. So what Heracles did was engage in hand-to-hand combat with that lion and broke its back right at the point of Zosma, right at that tailbone. After he had killed the lion, then he wanted to skin it and couldn't figure out how to do it because of that damn fur. So one of the gods whispered in his ear and said, use the claw of the lion itself. And so using that claw, he skinned the lion and then turned that into a cape with the head as a helmet. And that was what he wore. So he became that lion. And Zeus, because the lion had terrorized the population, but died nobly or something, decided to throw it up into the sky and make the Nemean lion into Leo, the constellation. Let's look at that. The Nemean lion is also said to be brother to the Sphinx, which we'll look at closer in a little bit, and then also to the serpent Ladon, and that was a symbol for the goddess. Zosma is also close to Coxa, and that is on the hip bone of the lion, or perhaps more internal. And this may be why those two are also related to lush sexuality, to happiness in the embrace, and to an extravagant and comfortable lifestyle. That is another part of Zosma and Coxa. On a personal level, I relate hard to Zosma. There are those who say that I have taken being conflict adverse to its opposite extreme and am conflict attractive. And it certainly can seem that way on some days. But what I am is conflict tolerant. I don't think that you can cause conflict. I think that the only thing you can do is take a conflict that's already in that person and raise it to the surface. That's the only time that people react. And there is only one thing that I ever argue about, which is that I am no better than anyone else, and neither are you. Now, most people aren't arguing that they're better than the other person. Like those are actually the funnest of conflicts. I mean, talk about getting my juices going. Those kind of conflicts where someone is trying to put me down, I am in my element. The conflicts that are hard are the ones that are conflicts with friends. And this is where someone is assuming you and I, we're better. We're better than these other people. And they're including you. There's that seduction of superiority. That's what any kind of group identity always is. And what I'm always saying is, no, we're not. Let me speak for that person who isn't here to speak for themselves. So I'm always adding in that perspective of the victim that isn't present, the one that is forgotten, the one that's in the corner that is not hearing directly what's being said. And that keeps me in conflict nearly all the time. I think the only time that we really move forward is when we're having those conversations with each other. That's the only time that we can resolve that and be able to go to a different perspective, one in which you are no different than me. Because if I'm going to see that we're one, I have to start by not wanting to make myself better than you. There's another important word in Zosma, which is oracle. The difference between the god and goddess is that with the gods, you were bossing them around. You were making sacrifices, doing rituals. You were invoking the right kind of magic to get God to do what you wanted him to do. With goddess, you were listening. You were trying to perceive what it is that goddess wants. So in my research for my book, OMGdess, I've come to a realization, because all of this conflict, it is really wearing. What I found is that if I spend the very first hour of the day writing, where I'm just in my research, I'm not arguing with anyone, I'm just settling in to what I'm discovering, that the rest of the day goes in a way that is much more agreeable. It's not that there isn't conflict, but that conflict moves us somewhere. It goes in a direction, and that has been feeling much better. My other fixed star is Denebola. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I like that sense of nebulous, of moving, because nebula is the tail of the lion. And so it is related to royalty still, but in a way that can shift with just a flick. This is something that is conflicted, that is going from one extreme to another, and can be very agitated and can also be peaceful and healing. The archetype that they look at with Nebula is Sekhmet, who was one of the first mythological figures the earliest, they say, to include the lion, because what she had was a lioness head and then the body of a woman. And she was the wrathful daughter, I think, of Ra. And so when Ra got fed up with having created humanity and said, "Get rid of them, Sekhmet," she was so angry and killed and slaughtered until even Ra couldn't take it anymore. And so he mixed persimmon juice, I believe, no, pomegranate juice with wine. And so she lapped it up thinking that it was blood and got drunk and then slept for 3 days and slept off her anger and wrathfulness. Let's look at the Sphinx. The Sphinx is a woman with the body of a lion and the wings of an eagle. And in the Greek myth, she waits for passers on the road and asks them a riddle. And if they cannot answer her riddle, she tears them limb from limb. In this, another hero, Oedipus, comes and he kills her, and that is how he becomes exalted. So we have now 4 lion-human combinations. We have the Nemean lion who gets exalted, even though he was terrorizing the population, and turned into stars and worshipped as a constellation for the rest of eternity. And then we have Heracles, who wears the helmet of a lion and becomes a hero. And then we have the women. So we have Sekhmet, who is seen as wrathful. How is that supposed to be the feminine? And then we have the Sphinx, another devouring mother. This is going back to that idea of the devouring mother. And what really happened? The original lioness was Mahit. What is called the Sphinx in Egypt was really Mahit. It was a carved lioness who faced her own constellation on the equinox. And that got recarved into a fucking pharaoh. So we've been shortchanged here. I don't think that constellation is Leo. I think that is Mahit. And it has an entirely different meaning because she is the guardian of the Nile and of the people. It's not Regulus, who is the heart, who is the ruler. Instead, it is Mahit, who watches over and makes sure that there are no victims. One of Chloe Margarita's titles for Denebola is the reluctant ruler and also the charismatic heretic. This is someone who is involved in other people's affairs, who is the cause of exciting events, and who also looks at authority in decentralized ways. I think that describes a lot of what I do. When I think about this personally, I think that the tale is a place of loneliness, that it is the extreme. It's going to the very end of what is the absolute cause. And I've been reading Gerda Lerner, who wrote The Creation of Patriarchy, and something she talks about is that men have written the myths, that they have taken control of the symbology so that we use those stories to interpret things, and that doing something different requires being okay with intellectual loneliness. I've come to terms with that's how it has to be. And something that I say is, I've waited 200 generations to speak. I can wait a little bit longer to be heard. And so I don't look at, am I having an effect? The tail doesn't really have an effect. What it does is perhaps give a warning and look at, here are the actions and here are the consequences. And let's put those two things together and show how they're related. That this movement of the tail is something that moves the whole body, and that the heart of the feminine is maybe the one that was exposed. I think that taking the claw and using the claw to skin the lioness, if that's who she was, is turning her own guards against her, using her own children against her. And that is the thing that can tear open a mother's heart. That's what we're looking to heal. And that, I think, is the journey in our stars over this generation. To take this back to Regulus and the concept of kingship, the original kings were Aryans. Aryan doesn't mean white people. It means ruling class. And that original spelling of Aryan was H-E-I-R-O, hero. They were the hieroglyphs. They started the hierarchies. These are all traced back to them, and they became the Hellenists who wrote both the Greek and Roman mythologies. Their god, the Sky Father, was Deus Pater. From his name Deus comes Zeus, and from Pater comes Jupiter. So both of those names go back to the Aryans, and the original, the first place that there was ever this concept of kingship was a tiny little hill with a few hundred people, and it was called Arslan Tepe, meaning hill of the lion. So Arslan was lion. So again, we get that R sound for Aryan, that they were the lion. And we need to turn that around and go back to the lioness who is the guardian, not the lion who is the ruler. And for more of the Wombat, here is the playlist on astrology, which is 4 fun videos, 3 of whom feature Isaac. Thank you for watching.